Hello, everyone. I hope you're all doing great. So, what do we discuss today? Today, we're going to talk about a book, a great book, in fact, which was written by Ronnie Screwvala. And the name of the book is Skill It, Kill It. Okay, it's nothing to do with violence, so don't worry. But it's a wonderful book for several reasons, and I'm going to talk you through those reasons. Let's understand what is this book about and how can you utilize this book for your career betterment. So without any further ado, let's get straight to the point. Let's understand what is Skill It, Kill It. So as I said, Skill It, Kill It is a book written by Ronnie Screwvala. And it's important to know about the author before we know about the book. Okay, so here are a few details that we need to know about the author, Ronnie Screwvala. So Ronnie Screwvala is a co-founder at Upgrad. Upgrad is a very renowned brand in the education sector. In fact, it's India's largest online higher education company. And apart from this, this is not the first venture that Ronnie Screwvala has started. He pioneered the cable TV in India and also successfully ran the media and entertainment company UTV. Apart from this, he is also a trustee of Swadesh Foundation, which is an NGO that is working towards improving the standard of living in the rural areas. And in addition to that, Ronnie Screwvala is also a successful and celebrated author. So he has donned multiple hats over his career and a very, very astute and intelligent investor as well as entrepreneur. So that's Ronnie Screwvala for you, who also happens to be the author of this book, Skill It, Will It. So what is this book about and what can you expect from this book? So let's understand a bit more about the basic details that book relates to, and then we'll talk about the learnings from the book. So this book was published in the year 2021, so not very, very long ago, very recent in fact. It belongs to a non-fiction genre, and it's not a big book. It's 165 pages, so very, very easy to read. In fact, you can breeze through the book in a matter of a day or two if you want to, and it's very easy to relate with. So that's something which is very fascinating about this book. This book ideally focuses on career growth. So if you want to enhance your career, if you want to grow and become big in your career, then definitely this book is meant for you. So any kind of professional career growth, and you will have all the answers in this particular piece of literature. This book was published by Penguin Random House India. So that's in a nutshell about what this book is. Now let's try and understand the crux of the book, which is the main insights. Now, let me also tell you, there are hundreds of insights, lots and lots of nuggets of wisdom. So it won't be possible for us to cover all of that. But here is what I'll try and do. I'll try and help you with my insights from the book. And I hope that my insights also help you look back at things from a different perspective. Maybe they will help you correlate with your realities. Okay, so let's understand what are some of the major insights that one can take from this book. Skill It, Kill It. Okay, so here we go. Insight number one, communication is everything. Everything is communication. Now, you might say that's something which we all know, right? Not really, because the way we think about communication is a very restrictive definition. So usually when we talk of communication, we usually think about creating an impression on the minds of other people, or impressing people. But that's not what communication generally is. It is far, far deeper than that. So communication is about creating meaning out of what you say. It's your ability to express yourself properly. And that is what the book also talks about, is that in the professional arena, in the corporate world, how you communicate with your people, who could be your colleagues, your customers, your manager, your stakeholders, anyone for that matter, how you communicate with people, express your point, understand their point of view, all of these things is what communication is all about. And that's why the phrase communication is everything. So if there is one skill that you definitely want to enhance to go ahead in your career or in your professional life, here it is. That's communication. And the book deeply talks about that. And the author, Ronnie Screwvala, actually goes on to say that the more you enhance your communication, the more doors will open for you in the corporate world. So it's an interesting take on the subject matter of communication, although communication has been spoken about in thousands and thousands of books. But I think it's a point that needs to be reinstated over and over and over again. And the book does a good job to do that. So communication is something that the book also harps upon. Next, just to extend on the thought of communication, and I love this point, it says strive to be a storyteller. Now, what is the meaning of a storyteller? In fact, you would have heard lots and lots of times that people in the corporate world would say that, don't tell me a story, come straight to the point, right? You would have heard that. But that's not what storytelling is. Storytelling does not mean you drag on something. It basically means you just take a minute or two to explain your point with the help of an example. Now, that example could be your own life story, something that you have experienced for yourself. It could be something that you've seen or observed, and you could correlate the current situation to that particular experience or that particular example. And that's why stories are powerful, because they're emotional, they connect with people, and they help you drive home a point convincingly without forcing or compelling your point. People are able to quickly understand where you're coming from and where you're headed to. So stories are really, really powerful. So even if you are in the corporate world, if you're a leader, if you're a subordinate, if you're a team member, you're a team leader, whatever roles you are in, try using a story to convince people about your point. That will help you connect with them. That will help you make it easier for people to understand your points as well. So being a storyteller is such a wonderful thing that you can do. However, it comes with practice. So if you have to tell a story for less than 2 minutes and you still have to drive home a strong point, then you have to keep practicing it over and over and over again. But I think it comes quite easily once you practice it. Start talking about your own examples, your own stories, and you'll see the magic happening for you. Next, which again is a very, very fascinating point, empathy is a sign of strength, not weakness. Now, there are two words that we often hear. One is empathy, the other is sympathy. Sympathy often means you feel bad about someone, especially if they're going through a tough time or they are in a tough situation. But that's not empathy. Empathy is your ability to put yourself in the shoes of the other person. Now, the book actually talks about empathy very, very strongly. It says that it's important for you to show empathy, but don't expect others to show empathy to you, right? I mean, it's good for you to showcase empathy, put yourself in the shoes of your customer, your colleague, your manager. That's great, wonderful, because you'll now be able to connect with them. You'll be able to talk their language. You'll be able to do a lot of things. But expecting empathy in return from people could mean that you might end up in disappointment. So don't expect others to show empathy, because when you don't expect others to show empathy, that means you're dependent on yourself. You become much more stronger and you're able to do things. But if you're a leader, if you are a professional, it makes a huge difference when you're able to demonstrate empathy. And the book does a nice job in explaining that. Of course, there are lots and lots of examples as well that you'll get to learn as you go through in the book. But it's important for us to demonstrate empathy. And that's what the book talks about in this particular case. It's a sign of strength, not weakness. The new LOL now. LOL normally in the chat language means laugh out loud, but that is not what we are talking about. In fact, that's the reason it says the new LOL, which is listen, observe, and learn. What does that mean? Now, there are so many people around us who have a point of view, and you may not appreciate the point of view, or, for example, you may disagree with them on several counts, but that should never stop you from listening to their point of view, which means you might say something like this: I disagree with you, but nonetheless, I'm willing to understand where you're coming from. I'm willing to invest my time in getting to know why you think this way. Maybe that will give me an opportunity to change your opinion, because this is how I think about it. So unless you're willing to listen, you will not be able to connect, you will not be able to correlate, you will not be able to convince, and so many other things. So listening is a skill that is seldom taught in schools and institutions, but in the corporate world, it holds a lot of significance. Unfortunately, many professionals tend to believe that communication is all about talking, speaking, and impressing, but they don't listen much. However, listening is a fundamental element that makes communication complete. This is what gives communication its true meaning. So your ability to listen to people, especially when you disagree with them, is of great significance. And it's not just about listening. It's also about observing. Now, there is a difference between looking and observing. So basically, when you look at things, you look at them and forget about it. But when you observe, you register. You're able to identify if there was a difference between what you saw the last time and what you're seeing right now. Your ability to decipher a situation, your ability to read people's body language for that matter, all of this will mean that you're investing time and energy and effort in understanding people and understanding situations. So observation is a great quality. We all know the apple fell, but it was Newton, the first one to ask why. So when you observe, you look at things from a different lens, and that gives you a perspective that you can establish over a period of time. So observation is as critical as listening. And of course, when you listen, when you observe, you decipher something out of it, you draw your conclusions, you're basically learning. So listening and observing both will aid learning. They complement each other. And that's why there is no substitute for it. And the book makes a very strong point on both listening as well as observing so that you can enhance your learning capability. Next, the book talks about multitasking. Now, you would usually, I'm sure all of you would have seen this picture either on Google, or you would have seen in any PowerPoint presentations where they usually show a person doing jugglery, right? Where he or she is tossing things up in the air and managing all of it at the same time. Or you might see a housewife who's managing different things at the same time, and they call it multitasking. But what we forget is that the person who is performing jugglery is still doing only one task, not 10 different tasks. And that is also precisely the point that the book tries to make very strongly, is that multitasking is a myth. We in the corporate world have been told that you need to have the ability to do 10 things at a time. But that's not really true. You might create the ability of doing 10 things, but at one point, you're only focusing on one thing. Trying to showcase that you are a Superman or a superhuman who can do 10 different things at a time means that you're going to end up in soup pretty soon. Therefore, whatever task you have in hand, focus on that at the time being, complete the task, and then go on to the next one. So that's always a reasonable thing to do, a sensible thing to do. And professionals who become experts in their arena focus on doing one thing at a time. They don't multitask, right? So whatever you do, for example, if you're focusing on sending an email to a client, and at the same time you're trying to pick up the call, well, you're headed for disaster, because the chances are you'll not be able to do justice to either of them. So focus on your email first, and once you're done with that, you focus on something else. As well as possible, declutter yourself one thing at a time so that you have the laser sharp focus that you need to have. So multitasking is not really necessary. In fact, it's best avoided. I love this point. Stability is a slippery slope. Now, why would you want to have stability as a slippery slope? So the point here is stability basically means most people want to be stable. They want to be in their comfort zone, and there is a problem with that. So a lot of people who join organizations, once they start delivering reasonable amount of performance, which is like 5 out of 10, they become comfortable. They think that, okay, my organization can't touch me anymore. I'll be here. I'll spend my lifetime in this company on this particular role. So I'll deliver what is necessary for me to survive, not something necessary for me to prosper, which in itself is a fundamental flaw in terms of how you think. Because in today's world, if you are happy with mediocrity, sooner than later, you will become redundant. No organization, no institution wants to have people who are in a comfortable zone. So it's important to keep challenging yourself time and again. And the same is true in terms of your career as well, is that you've got to question yourself time and again. Am I being too comfortable with what I'm doing? Am I stretching myself enough to let my creative juices flow? Am I doing sufficient to challenge myself at an intellectual level? Those are hard questions to answer. But guess what? It's important to ask these questions to yourself at regular intervals, because nobody else will do that for you. And therefore, you've got to be comfortable with discomfort, because if you get into the stability zone, you might soon become redundant and nobody would love to hire you or give you more work. So that's something you've got to guard yourself against. Any sort of complacency could be a disaster in the meeting. Best avoided, therefore. Batteries and vampires. Now, those two terms don't even go together, but I'll tell you something. This is one of the most fascinating points that I personally found in this book. Very, very enriching. And in fact, it's thought-provoking as well. So what are batteries and vampires? So batteries, we all know, are something that charge, right? It charge equipments, material, whatever you're using, you need to charge the batteries. But there are things in your life which also charge your batteries. For example, when you do something that you love to do, it could be, let's say, drawing or painting, or it could be talking to people or interacting with them, having a conversation, or for that matter, negotiating a tough business decision, whatever the situation might be. But if you love something from the bottom of your heart, then it will charge your batteries. You will never feel tired. You'll never feel out of place there. Whereas there are certain things in our life which are also like vampires. Vampires are blood-sucking creatures, right? They suck every ounce of blood from your body and therefore energy. And then you feel absolutely lazy. You feel tired. You feel uninterested. Now, there are things in our life where we feel like we have vampires around us. For example, we have negative people around us who would suck every ounce of energy from you. Or for that matter, you're doing something just for the heck of it. You don't really want to do it, but you're doing it nonetheless because you need to do it maybe. Or you're forcing yourself to do something that you're not willing to do. And people make those choices in their careers as well, because of which sooner than later, they run out of gas and they feel tired, depleted, exhausted, sometimes even depressed. So the book suggests that you need to focus more on doing things that you love to do so that you can give your 100%. That is something which will keep your batteries charged all the time. And it's not just about doing things, it's also about relationships. Having the right kind of people in your life will mean that you have batteries recharged all the time. On the contrary, if you're doing things which you don't like to do, or you're doing it just for the heck of it, just to impress the world around you, or something where you don't have your heart in it, then possibly it will drain your batteries. It's an actual vampire. So what should you do? Try to have more batteries in your life. And as far as possible, eliminate the vampires. The more you focus on your batteries, the better it is, because that will mean that you're able to do your job 100% all the time. Okay. So if you take care of your mobile phone and make sure that your mobile phone is 100% charged, I think you need to also empathize with your own self and make sure that you are 100% charged. That's the least you could do for your own self. Last but not the least, the book talks about lifelong learning. Now, as I spoke to you about this, Ronnie Screwvala is also at the helm at Upgrad, which is an institution that provides online education and deeply believes in the ethos of lifelong learning. Now, that's something that you keep reading throughout the book, because he emphasizes on lifelong learning, which means that you keep learning all the time, and not just in the form of degrees or getting professional degrees, but everywhere you can have an opportunity to learn. So you can learn from people around you, you can learn on the job, you can learn from your bosses, your subordinates, whosoever it is, but you have to keep learning. Now, why should you keep learning? Because the current world requires you to be dynamic and robust. It requires you to take responsibilities and deliver those responsibilities successfully. Also, when you keep learning, you do not become obsolete. You are always up to the mark because you know about the latest trends in your industry, in your job, and therefore, even if you want to quit a job and find a new one, you can do that. Or if you want to enhance the chances of promotion in your current role, you can also do that. So lifelong learning is not just a phrase, it is perhaps a way of living. Yeah. And I think this is something which is very, very strongly spoken about in the book. So if there's one thing that you want to take from this book, I would say it's lifelong learning. It's the ethos that you need to keep continuously focusing on enhancing yourself every which ways, whatever you need to do to enhance your knowledge, because knowledge at the end of the day will help you move ahead in your career, in your profession. So lifelong learning has got absolutely no substitute. And I think the book does a remarkable job in explaining that in depth. Now, apart from the points that I spoke to you, the insights that I derived, there are some beautiful statements, and it would be a disservice not to talk about these statements. And I'm not saying these are the only 5 statements. There are many, many more, which are pearls of wisdom, as I would like to call it. But these are the top 5 that I enjoyed reading, and you'd want to reread them every time just to bring a smile on your face, or perhaps to inspire yourself. So here's the first one. Your career and professional growth are your responsibility. Now, how true is that? Many a times you have people in their 30s and their 40s complaining about the fact that, you know, why I couldn't do well in my initial career because I got a bad boss. Or, you know, my colleagues, my team members were jealous of me, and all those stuff comes out, which is barely a whining attitude, a complaining attitude. Whereas honestly, it's got to do nothing with other people. Your career is your career. Your professional growth is therefore your responsibility. And the more you own up, the more responsibility you take towards your career, the more you'll find in better position. You'll find that you're able to make the right choices at the right time because you're taking complete accountability for your career. So don't be dependent on others, although you'll require mentorship from others, but it's absolutely futile to say that someone else is responsible because you haven't done well in your career. I think you've got to flip that. You've got to make sure that you completely keep yourself in the limelight and take complete responsibility for your actions. Number two, it talks about the fact, I think we just spoke about this lifelong learning, but how true is this? And this statement, I think, is brilliantly put up. It says, lifelong learning is the heartbeat of career success. Now, you could be an accountant, or you could be someone who is a company secretary, or you could be in sales and marketing and operations, whatever roles you perform. Just ask yourself, when was the last time you invested time, effort, money in enhancing your subject knowledge? Was it 3 months ago? Was it 6 months ago? Was it 1 year ago? Was it 10 years ago? Right? Now, the more you think about it, I think it will make you do something about it. So if you haven't invested time, energy, effort in learning something new, just for your own subject knowledge, perhaps you are behind in the context of where the world is heading right now. So keeping yourself abreast with the latest trends of your subject knowledge or your job role or your industry is an absolute requirement that one cannot deny or ignore today. So ask yourself this question. I think that's why it is said that lifelong learning is the heartbeat of career success, because it just doesn't stop. There is no end to it, right? So many times people say, I've done my post-graduation now. That's it. I can breathe easy. I can just focus on my job and making money. That's not true. In fact, as the old saying goes, if you want to earn more, you got to learn more. So there it is. Number three, if you want to stand out, make your boss look really good. Now, that's an interesting one, isn't it? Now, a lot of times we expect our boss to support us, give us mentorship, also promote us, which is all good, which is all fine. Nothing wrong with that. However, it's also a reciprocal relationship, which means that you don't need to do any kind of appeasement for your boss. That is not what it means. But it's important that whatever work you do reflects upon your boss in a positive or negative way. And therefore, if you do a great job, it makes your boss look good in front of other teams. If you do a shabby job, it makes your boss look bad, right? That's one reason why you should also focus on trying to do your best. Again, going back to the same mediocrity discussion that we had, whatever job is given to you, if you can try and do 100% of that job, I think that in itself is a good starting point. This also means that when you make your boss look good, you create a zone where you'll connect with him or her in a more positive way. It will enhance and strengthen your relationship with your boss. So you don't need to do any kind of appeasement. You don't need to do anything remarkably different, but anything that you do, anything that you say, if that makes your boss look like a superhero, guess what? There are good things likely to happen for you as well. So that's the point, is that you got to make sure that you make your boss really look good. Number 4, and this is one of my personal favorites, avoid the comparison trap. Instead, aim to beat your last best performance. How often do we compare? I think zillions of times, right? We compare ourselves in school, in college, in our society, at home with our siblings. And in fact, our parents also compare us with many other people in the outside world. And the same holds true even when we reach the corporate world, is that we start comparing ourselves to our colleagues, to our team members. We start comparing every time there is an increment letter handed over to us. We are keen to know how much the other person is earning and how much you are earning and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, honestly and practically, it's a futile effort, because that only increases disappointment, jealousy, or in some cases, it can be even worse. So what's the remedy to all of that? Rather than comparing yourself to someone else, which in itself is an insult, compare yourself with your own version of your past self. So who I was yesterday and who I am today, do I see a remarkable difference between the two? If not remarkable difference, is there a small positive difference? So it makes a lot of practical sense when you start comparing yourself with yourself. Where was I last year? Where am I this year? How better can I be in the year to follow? That is a far, far pragmatic way of doing comparison rather than comparing yourself blindly with other people. It's a trap. And I completely agree with that. That's the right word to use. It is a trap. It's a mental trap. You can never get out of it. You'll never have enough of it, and you can never be happy with it. So as a professional, although the world will compare you with other people, but at least you can have the empathy for yourself, where you compare yourself with yourself and not with the rest of the world. I think that's the least that we could do for ourselves because we deserve it, right? Last but not the least, it also says, here are beautiful words in the book which says, you can't expect others to believe in you if you don't believe in yourself. How true is that? We expect our manager, our team members, our clients, our family, our friends, everyone to think great about ourselves. But what we think about ourselves is, I'm a bloody loser. Now, if you think of yourself as a bloody loser, you can't expect the world to think of you as a winner. That's never going to happen. And I think that's such a wonderful point. It's a great insight. It's an earth-shattering insight. Why? Because unless you believe in who you are as a professional, the world is never going to believe you. So you've got to put your best foot forward. You've got to reassure yourself that I'm constantly going to learn. I'm constantly going to evolve. I will have roadblocks and obstacles on the way, but that does not mean I'm a loser. I'm going to constantly improve. There will always be a better version of me. There will be a version 1, 2, 3, and 4, but it will never end. I think that's the self-belief which takes a professional to the next level. It's not about talent. It's more about the attitude. And this statement talks about attitude. So think about yourself highly without any arrogance, of course, and the world will believe that you deserve better things. So those are some pearls of wisdom that I drew from the books. And when you read it, of course, there you'll find many, many more such pearls of wisdom, such nuggets of wisdom that you can apply in your own context. Now, the important question, who should read this book? I would say everyone. Well, I believe every book should be read by everyone. But if you want to be slightly more specific, if you're a fresher trying to find a job in the industry, then you must read this book. Okay. For the simple reason, it is not too lengthy. And at the same time, it gives you some really hard practical insights in a very, very lucid language. So if you're a fresher seeking a job opportunity, you must read this book. Similarly, if you're a job seeking professional, perhaps you might be at a career stage where either you're stuck in a job or you're looking for a change of job or you lost a job because of layoff. There we go. This book is meant for you. If you're a leader who is trying to help his or her team members understand about professionalism and career growth, then definitely you can also read this book and you can share that knowledge with your team members. Along with this, if you're an employability educator, someone who believes that you need to help people find jobs or become a better professional so that they are absorbed by the industry, then you can surely use this knowledge and disseminate that to people whom you tutor, whom you mentor. And last but not the least, anybody, and I mean anybody looking or aspiring for career growth, professional growth, this book is going to be supremely helpful for you. So these are the people who must read this book. But as I said, anyone who is looking for a good read, you can surely pick this book up. Now, how should you read this book? This is very, very important here. First and foremost, this is a small book, so I would urge you not to skip anything, okay? Why? Because each chapter is hardly 4 or 5 pages long, and therefore you can take your time, read it properly. My suggestion is just read maybe one chapter at a time in a day, and then move on to the next one. Also, it would make sense if there are certain chapters in the book which you can mark as these are chapters to be reread. Now, why should you reread some of these chapters? For example, if there is a chapter on empathy, or if there is a chapter on communication, or there is something which helps you become future ready, all of these are good chapters, and these are chapters which will give you insights that you may not have discovered earlier. So anything that you find is very, very important from your perspective, my suggestion is reread that chapter. Perhaps when you reread that chapter, your perspectives will sharpen, you'll be able to absorb more out of it. So this is one of those books where certain chapters are meant to be read because it gives you some practical advice that you may want to immediately apply. So that's a good thing to do with this book. There is a beautiful section. In fact, there are two sections towards the end of each chapter. One of them is called 5 core takeaways and call to action. And I loved reading these sections. The 5 core takeaways talk about what are the key takeaways from each chapter. So let's say you've completely read the book and you want to refer to some of the chapters quickly. You can simply go directly to the 5 core takeaways and call to action, and you'll remember everything that you read in that chapter. So it's a great way to summarize the learnings from each chapter. And at the same time, when you read this, it might make sense if you can keep a pen and paper handy, or if you maintain a diary to register your learnings from a book. I would certainly encourage you to do that. Pen down your thoughts, because every time you read a chapter, there will be an insight that you may want to apply. So penning down your thoughts is going to give you that benefit. And last but not the least, of course, if there are important sections, keep a marker or keep a highlighter handy, and you can revisit those sections as and when needed. So that's what this book will help you to do. Right. So that's pretty much about what this book is. And therefore, I think there is more than one reason why you should read this book. So do read it. Skill it, kill it. It's a wonderful book. It will give you lots and lots of areas to look at, and surely will help you from a professional and from a career perspective. So once you read this book, do let me know your thoughts about it and how it helped you enhance your career opportunities. That's all from my side in this edition of the book review, and we'll meet again shortly with another book in mind. Till then, take care of yourself, and I will see you very, very soon. Bye-bye for now.